Your recording is going to come in several stages because of how many times we've had to start and stop. So sorry about that. Don't quite know how to get around that. Let me make sure this cord stays in really tight. Okay. Okay. Okay, so we've got this, we've done a little dry brushing in here on our wings. I'm going to set these up here with my other parts. And we're going to go back to our toga. And we're going to use this mixture to do a little bit of lining. So you can wash out your big dry brush if you are still using that so it doesn't dry. In fact, you can rinse both of them out so they don't dry. Let's just make sure we don't have any issue with dried paint. And the kind of liners that I like to use have been varied over the years, but right now I'm really liking this one by Chris Hoy. It's an 18-aught. I used to love Low Cornell 18-aughts, but again, can't find them anymore. And when I line, I'm going to put some of this in the center pool here so I can draw from. I take my brush and I have some water in here that's dripping, and it's kind of dripping off the end and dripping into this pool that I'm going to line from. I take the wet from the brush and mix it in a little bit on the edge or the side here, and then I pull out from the pool and I twist my brush, or I rotate my brush like that. And as I pull it out from the thinned paint and rotate my brush, it pulls all the tips of the bristles, let me pull it over a black area, into a fine point. And that way you can get your lining as skinny or as fat as you want. So the lines on these togas, if you look at the picture of the toga, there's 3 lines that go down and 2 lines in between, then 3 lines, then 2 lines, then 3 lines. These are the ones that go vertical. On the groups of the 3 lines, it's the 2 on the outside that are done with this mixture. So you're going to line here. And then you're going to skip the line that's in the middle. And these don't have to be super thin because this is just a pattern on a fabric. So you could make these as thin or as thick as you want. I have a tendency to line thinner. Okay, so then you skip the next grouping that just has 2 lines and you go over to the next grouping with 3. And again, you're going to put in your every other line. Skip the line with 2 and go to your grouping of 3. That one dried out a little bit. And then this one over here is a grouping of 2. So that's the last one on that edge that you need to do. And then there's one more grouping of 2 and a grouping of 3 over here on this side. So here, let me show you. So on this last bit of lining that I did, my paint started to get dry. And what that means is I need to add another drop of water from my brush into my paint pool. So now as I pull out more paint, I'm getting some that has enough juice in it, if you will, so that you can get those longer strokes of color. So once I have a quote unquote juicier brush, you can get the long floats of color. And that one I'm not crazy about. It came out a little bit too wide. So my paint eraser, I have to get a new paint eraser. I'll take that off and I'll touch up the end of that stripe. Okay, so there you have the first of your vertical lines. And then we're going to go the other direction. And you might, this is kind of a long stretch, I realize. So this one you probably have to start and stop a little bit, but make sure that your pool of paint that you're drawing from has enough water in it. Okay, and so there's a green stripe on the top. These are sets of 2 lines that go across this way. The top line is green, and it's the bottom line that we're going to do in this pink. So
Okay.
gird up, because these are long lines. I want you to start here and go across and get that second line in, and they can be wavy or straight. I mean, fabric when it's folded is never flat and straight. So if yours has waves, it's just got more character and will probably actually look a little more realistic. I need to fix a little tiny area right there I'm not crazy about. Okay, and there's only 3 of these lines that go across, even though they're quite long. And yours is longer than mine, so take your time. We don't have to, we're not on any, well, we are on a deadline now. I was going to say we're not on a deadline, but yeah, we're short on time. But you want to be able to like what you've done after, so try to relax your shoulders if possible. Mine are kind of tense right now, but I'm trying to just take big breaths and keep going. Now, you may think in your head, but we're going over our center wrinkle. Don't worry about it, because we're going to be touching it up, and it doesn't stay on the center wrinkle the whole time. Because what did we just say? Fabric folds. But we will get that shading back in there soon. How's your stripes looking?
Good.
Good. So if you, since these are kind of long lines, it might help to start and stop on one of your cross lines. Just might hide your stop and start area a little bit better. You know, if you have to pick up again. So like I stopped and started here with this, where I had this other line going. Okay, so that's what, I just drug that across my palette. That's what it looks like. That's what you're after. And let me know when you're ready. I think I'm going to widen this one slightly. Although if I didn't, it would be okay. Can everybody see that okay?
Yep.
Okay, good. Go ahead and rinse out your lining brush really well. Okay, and then the next color that we're going to go to is Purple Petal. So we can put these two away and pull out our Purple Petal, which is a pretty good color. It's kind of new. I love a different purple that I used to use for everything, but I'm liking this one. It's got pretty good coverage, and we're going to be lining with this again. So again, put it in a place where you can make a little pool and draw out from it with your liner. Okay, so the Purple Petal stripes. When we did our vertical stripes, we had sets of 3 and sets of 2 and sets of 3 and sets of 2. For the vertical stripes, the Purple Petal ones are the sets of 2. Okay, so get some water in your brush, pull out a little bit from your Purple Petal, do a little twisting as you pull out. I'm going to get a little bit more, and get your liner brush ready, and it's the sets of 2 that are both Purple Petals side by side. Purple Cow's the one that I used to love. I still love that one. When that one comes back, when it's not verboten, in other words, when DecoArt starts to produce it again, I'll probably go back to Purple Cow, but I like this one too. It's close to the same shade and it's got pretty good coverage. So anyway, you just got to try the new stuff to know what you love. So then move on to your next set of double stripes. They can be wavy or not. They can be as thick or as thin as you like. And since it's a plaid, it doesn't even have to be consistent all the way across because fabric folds, fabric changes, catches the light in different ways. Now, if when you do this, you find that your paint is too sheer, then just pull down into this water part a little bit more from the full strength paint. And just the act of pulling it down in and reloading your brush will pretty much mix it together again for you. And I didn't draw mine on, but there's another set right over here. I'm not sure if I just missed it myself or I missed it on the pattern, but if I did not have a set of double lines over here, put them in right there in the wide part of the toga. Okay, so there you are. On the camera, you can't tell a lot of difference, but you can tell more visually in real life than what it looks like there. Okay, so that's what we're going to do there. Now we're going to go to our wings. Rinse out your liner brush pretty well. We're going to use something big to dot these flowers, the center of these flowers. Let me just move this over. Now for this, for dotting, make sure you don't use the watery paint. You want your dots to be the same size. So just get another little fresh pool of paint. And you want to use the end of a paintbrush. You could even use like a pencil if it weren't super wide. And whatever you use, you just want the end of it to be, this is too small for me. You want it to be round and fairly big. This is going to make the right size of dot. So I'll go back to these brushes that we're using today, and this will be a pretty good size dot on the end of this brush. And you're just going to simply dip and dot the biggest circles in here, and then we'll have to set that aside so we don't drag our hands through it and let those dry. So if whatever you're dotting with is not quite big enough, And you can just very gently move it around in a circular pattern to get it to fill in the right size, but most likely what you've chosen will work just great. So there you go. Oh, it's too glary. And then move it someplace where you won't set something in it. I'm going to go right up here on my keyboard. Okay, so set that aside. That's off the end of your brush. So you don't drag it through your clothes or anything tricky like that. Okay. Okay, so the next color that you're going to use is jadeite glass. This is one of their new colors. And you're going to mix it with a little bit of eucalyptus leaf. You're going to go 2 parts of jadeite glass to 1 part of eucalyptus leaf. And these are brand new bottles, so I'm going to have to shake them up really well.
If you don't have jadeite glass, do you have a suggestion of what to substitute?
Yeah, just use, look how close in color they are.
Right.
Let's see, turn it on the glare. You can see it better like that. You just, did you find eucalyptus leaf?
I have eucalyptus, just not jadeite.
Just mix some white with it
Okay.
to lighten it up. Just make sure your shades are that different.
Okay.
Because here's your 3 shades of green we're dealing with. And as long as you have 3 values,
Right.
that's really all you're after, okay? So let me give these a good shake. And remember, 2 parts of jadeite to 1 part of eucalyptus leaf. Eucalyptus leaf, I'm just kind of in love with. And I am not a green person, but I just think that is beautiful to me. It's got some blue in it. Maybe that's why it appeals to me so much. But anyway, I kind of found a new love, a new paint love. And we don't need a whole lot of this at this time. This is just going to be the other stripe in our toga. And a little bit on our wings. It's going to be some of the leaves on our wings. Okay. So stir that up really well. There you go. Okay. Once you get that ready, now we left a line on our togas. We left a couple of lines on our togas. We had the sets of 3, and then we had the top one of these. So the middle line and the sets of 3 are going to be this green, as well as the top line along here. So thin your paint out a little bit and pull it to a point, turn and twist it. And let's go ahead and start getting some of the color, the rest of the color on our toga. Is it going okay? Well, that's twice I've put my finger in a wet paint, so try not to do that. Don't do what I do. Okay, so now your toga has got all the plaid pattern on it. And back to our wings, which the purple is still going to be wet, so be careful not to touch them. There's little tiny stroke flowers that are going to be underneath those, and we're going to do this with this mixture. Let's reboot all. Not really, I'm showing you. I'm going to paint right over this message. And to make these tiny leaf flowers, you're just going to, I'm going to pull it up close. You're going to get a tiny bit of green and touch, and then pull, and touch, and pull. And that's all they are for the tiny leaves. So those are kind of randomly all over under these purple dots. Make sure you don't touch the purple. Touch, pull, touch, pull. So these, the leaves are just kind of random. Now some of your dots may have gone over the leaves. Doesn't matter, just make the leaves in different directions. You choose if you didn't draw them on or they got covered with paint. It's kind of a pretty color, isn't it? That green mixture.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I really like it. So let's see. That's very glary. I can't even see it. You can't really tell, but you'll have little purple dots with green leaves under like that. Okay. And then set that aside to dry again. Where's my other one? Right here. How did it work out to add white to the eucalyptus leaf?
It was fine. It's just a green, so yeah, I think it's gonna be fine.
Yeah, it's not even a major part of the design. It's just like a little accent color. So it will. You
It's
could
nice.
have used really anything.
Yeah, it'll be good. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, you could set that aside to dry. And maybe our toga stripes are dry. That'll be good. Okay, so I want you to take some Snow White and just dab a tiny bit of milk chocolate in it. And all we're trying to do is to make just an off-white. Doesn't need to be very tan, just, you know, and we only need a little amount because we're just doing tiny dots with this at this point. So milk chocolate, really just 1 drop. Something like that ratio. All we're doing is toning down the white so it doesn't look so glaring. And just give that a good stir. That's a little too tan. I'm going to add a little more white. You just want it to look slightly off-white. We could have used a light buttermilk, something along those lines. Yeah, more like that. Okay, and then we're just gonna, let me wash off the end of my brush here. We're going to go back to our leaves and we're going to put little dots of polka dot in between here with this mix. So pick a stylus of your preference. And these little dots in between are just going to have a touch of this little mixture here. Okay, I'll be right back. Keep dotting and I'll see you in just a second. Just need to run to the restroom really quick. Hold on. Okay, how's everybody doing? Okay. Okay, the heart, the Cupig heart. And the arrowhead, where's our arrowhead? So the top of our arrowhead, I don't like this mixture, which is a substitute for the top of our arrowhead. It was supposed to be the top of this heart and the top of the arrowhead. So I'm going to add a little more white to it. So it's not quite bright white. I'm going to lighten it up even further. And we're going to use this as a highlight. Let's add 1 drop of purple petal to it. We're kind of going after a look that was like the paint wisteria. So now I've got a very off-white. And it's just going to have a slight purple tint.
So was it the one that had the brown mixture in it, or
Yeah.
you are? Okay.
Yeah, it was the white with 1 drop of brown, and then I added and that's what we used to dot our wings with. And now I added some more white, and I'm going to put just a couple drops of purple petal in it. And I'm going for a super, super light purple that we're going to put on the top of our arrowhead. And we'll put some of it in our Cupig heart, believe it or not. Sounds a little strange, but we're going to dot inside our Cupig heart with it. Okay, so going back to the dry brushing thing, we're going to I'm going to get one that's actually dry. We're going to get a little bit on here, and we're going to dry brush the tip of our arrowhead. So it's got just a little bit of highlight. Doesn't need to be a lot. And so this is a heart, but remember that your dowel's going to go in the bottom here. And so this is going to be the top, the pointy part up here. So this is what we're going to dry brush. And since this has a side to it, we're going to get some of that color in on the side. And I'm going to do the back too. Well, no, I didn't, because I didn't paint the back. But if your back's painted, do the back too, so that as you know, if you put this out on a table or something. That's just my OCD speaking through. You decide about that. I always paint the backs of my stuff. I don't know, you do. Okay, so you don't need it very far. Just kind of like the upper third of it is brightened, and along the sides as well. Okay, and then you can set that out of the way. We won't be using that for a minute. Let's pull out your bow, and let's also put a little bit on the bow as a highlight. Now this wide part here on the bow, that's going to be, you know, the hand's going to be over that. So don't worry too much about that. That's why it bumps out a little bit, to give it a little more gluing surface. So when it comes to shading and highlighting the bow, you don't need to worry about the center bump area. But let's get some of this highlight along the top part of it so it matches everything. And again, I always go on the sides. Now, I was going to tell you something. I thought it in my head when I was talking earlier, and I didn't get to verbalize it because sometimes I think faster than what I can actually do or talk. But on my original, which I did in 2013, so he's pretty old, the tip of my arrow broke off, and it is a pretty skinny part. And so if that ever happens to you, you could just goop it behind, and it would be fine. So I'll probably touch up the paint right there with Wisteria was the actual color, and then just glue it behind. So it'll, as long as you don't drop it, and this has been through 3 different moves, which is what caused the casualty. It'll be pretty strong. So anyway, just a little tip. Just a little tip. Okay. You can go ahead and scrub in a little color to it here at the bottom if you want. I don't normally do that along the bottom, but you can put a little bit here. But we're going to end up shading the bottom more heavy than we do the top. Wouldn't worry about the sides because they're going to be shaded darker. But while we've got this mix here. Okay, and then in your Cupig heart, we've still got this mixed up. We're going to go ahead and dot your Cupig heart. And it's got that slight purple tinge. And then we will float around the Cupig heart with purple, which sounds weird, but when you put it in there, it will all go together and it'll be a good mix. Because it's got a touch of the purple in it, it will make everything else look like it blends and quote unquote feels at home like one of the family. So there we go. You can do as many hearts or as few as you want. I've done quite a few. I'm feeling a little dot happy today. You can see that. Anyway, set it aside to dry. Now I did not wash out this brush that I just did this in, and I did that on purpose because I'm going to use it again for a darker color. So I'm going to pull out some more Algerian crimson. And remember how we better move that so I don't drag my, remember how we put some of the shading right over the center crease? You're going to dry brush a little bit of shading back over that, and we're going to float back over that and around the sides again, just to kind of, now we've got the plaid in there. Now we're going to tuck all the plaid in there like it fits and belongs. So here's a tip. I got to think how to word this. Whenever you're doing like a surface and you've got like it's fabric or something and you're doing a print on it or a plaid on it or something, it's good to get the shading in and then you put the color on, but then you also need to shade over it again to kind of tuck the color back in so it looks like it belongs to the fabric. Otherwise, it's just something that's sitting on top and it looks awkward. And I think you'll see what I mean here as soon as we get some of this Algerian crimson loaded back in. So here's how it looks with the lines painted over our crease. I'm just going to dry brush again over this crease. And I'm going to dry brush the edges again, around all the edges again, and then we'll just float them really quick. And then you'll be able to see how the additional color sets the plaid back in. So this is not meant to be time consuming. Just anywhere where you have some of the plaid on the edges, just go ahead and scruff it in or dry brush over it to tuck them back in, to make them look like they're bending with the fabric instead of just laying out on top of the fabric. Yeah, that's a little too wet. Didn't like that too much. Okay, so I kind of reestablished that. And now we're going to float a little bit and reestablish that just to deepen the shading again. So I want to take, oh, here it is. So we're going to use our Algerian crimson. And you're going to make a slight mixture. Sounds a little strange, but this is actually what it is. And you're going to put just 1 or 2 drops of true red, this bright red. It kind of reddens it up a little bit. You don't want too much, just a little bit. And I want you to take out a little bit of zinc, and this is not what your instructions say. Maybe a little bit of lamp black. Write this in. You want to add a drop of lamp black in here. What we're trying to do is get our darkest and deepest value, and then we're done with our darkest shades. Can you see what I'm doing here? Okay. So I've got the bulk Algerian crimson. You can kind of see my ratio here. Then I've added a couple drops of true red and just 1 drop of lamp black. And what we're after is kind of a burgundy that's even darker than our Algerian crimson, but we don't want a black. It's almost like a black plum, kind of like that. I love black plum, but we can't use that color for right now. So, and if it's a little dark, go ahead and if you don't want it quite that dark, that's understandable. You can add just a tiny bit more of true red. And we're going to do a sheer float. And I don't know how many of you have been in any of my classes where I do a sheer float. See, that brings the color up just a little bit. And this is going to be our final depth that we're going to put in here. But the sheer float is similar to a regular float, but it's a way to get the same color, but have it more sheer or more see-through. So the way I like to do that is I'm going to bring my brush basin into view, the camera, I think, so you can see it. And you can see, let me move everything here so you can see my palette. Goodbye, Toga. You're out of the picture. We've got to get this all in here so you can see what I'm going to do. This is a very strange setup for me. I hope I don't drag my arm through the paint, but it's kind of important so you can see how to do a sheer float. Okay, when you do a regular float, I am really afraid I'm going to drag through this paint. You, of course, get your brush ready and you pull out some water on your palette, on your paper towel, and then you side load into your color. So you've got it's a little awkward side loading from down in a well. So you've got some paint on the sides of your brush, right? And then you go to your palette and you blend back and forth. And that's how you get your shading to graduate from one side to the other. To do a sheer float, then you re-dip your brush back in, don't swish it, bring it back to your paper towel, pull more water out of it, a little bit more than you think, and take it back to your palette again, and you'll still have the paint there, but now you got a little bit of a lighter tone. Sometimes I do it twice dipped. Take it and dry it back off again in your paper towel. And now go back and palette. And now you've got the same amount of color there, but it's more sheer, and yet it's not dry. So here's my original. And I picked up some paint there. Let me demonstrate again. What you're after is to have the same value of color, but not so it covers everything so that it's sheer. So my original, okay. Now, the biggest problem you'll have with this is water control. When you dip it back in, you're picking up more water. So make sure you leave it on your paper towel long enough. Now, the color's still there, but it's getting lighter. I'm going to dip it again, dry it out on my paper towel, and now it's sheer. And now we're ready to start floating in over our creases and around all the sides. You're going to do it with the sheer method, and it won't be as obscure as everything you had before. Won't cover everything up. You'll be able to see it slightly, but it will darken everything. So go ahead and float all around your toga in your creases using this sheer float method, and we'll establish our darkest values, and then we'll move on to our pig, which will be fun. Any questions about that? I'm not hearing people, so I assume no.
I do have a question, Sharon. So when you're when you're reloading each time, are you reloading it with like going in and doing like you were going to do a regular float and redipping, or are you just redipping and reloading?
I'm just only dipping into the paint once. So let me show you. So, okay, so here's my initial. I have no paint in the brush. So just like you would with the float, right? You dry it out on your paper towel, side load. So you've got some paint on the brush. Can you see this? And then do your basic blend.
Sure.
And then no paint, okay? Back in the water with no paint, but I'm not swishing. I'm not trying to wash it all out. Then go to your paper towel and pull out the water again. Take it to your palette and dry it out again. It's going to be more sheer. In this case, I'm going to do it 3 times. And each time I do it, it gets lighter. I've got the intensity of color. It's just not as much paint, so it won't obscure everything that's underneath it. You want to be able to see some of the stuff that's underneath it without completely blocking it out. You follow?
Right. But then like say when you're basically your paint runs out after you've done a little bit, then are you going and doing the whole process again?
Yeah, I am. Yeah. Now, once you get comfortable with this and kind of know what you're after, you can go into one of your, if you're using a wet palette, you can go back onto one of your original wet floats, because there will be a little bit of paint in there, and pick some up from there. Does that make any sense to you? So you can see right away, when you can see it without the glare, that this is the step that finally sets everything back in place where it belongs, and what kind of tucks things away, and then we can kind of walk away from the toga. But he's kind of the toga's kind of the middle point of your thing, and whether or not you realize it, it's where your eyes are drawn to when you first look at him. This is kind of awkward not painting flat on the table, but I'm doing this so that you can see. So remember this, to trail off these little wrinkles right here. This one is a little too thick for my liking. I'm going to have to thin that out a little bit. I didn't love the way that one looked. Christy, is Nola's not still working, is she?
No, she's retired.
Okay, I thought so, but I remember some of the stories she used to tell. Yikes.
Mhm.
Christy's mother used to work at the prison. Was she a guard? What did she do?
She was a deputy warden, yeah.
We live in Utah, at the Utah State Prison, and she had some really interesting stories. And I have not seen her angry, but I bet she could really hold her own when it came to it.
Yes, she could.
I've just known her as this very nice lady that would laugh a lot and take classes, but I guess I could see that. We're all probably like that, I guess, if backed into a corner, right?
Yes, but I think part of that she had to learn to become that way, partly because when she first started there, I wouldn't say that was really her personality, but some of it, she just had to learn you have to do what you have to do.
Right. I have never worked there, and that's intentional because it would be hard for my personality, but with the kinds of contacts that she would have on a regular basis, it would be critical that she could defend herself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not necessarily physically, but maybe physically, but at least verbally,
Mostly
and
verbally. I don't think she ever had anyone that attacked her.
good. But she would have to project an air of authority also. So that's kind of where I'm thinking. Anyway, just a little fun side note for you other painters there. Okay, so everybody about got it? You got your darkest in, and like I said, this Algerian crimson dries lighter than what you think when it's wet. Now, as far as the sides of all my wood is concerned, we won't do it here, but when you're all done, paint the sides of your wood the darkest values that you're using. So this is the darkest value. So I would go ahead and paint the sides of my wood this color at the end of class. I'll probably have to paint over that because it's a mixture, but keep that in mind when you're done. It kind of makes everything look a little more finished. Okay, so I think I need to emphasize this one wrinkle over here again, and then we're going to set this aside. We're going to go to our wings. We're just going to darken in that little float around the inside of our wings and make sure that that matches. So let me move that to the side because I painted that. So where we floated around here, you just want to follow suit with the same, oh, I'm not in the camera. You want to follow suit with the same dark burgundy-ish color. And remember, this is a pretty skinny float, so you don't need a lot of wide paint on your brush. The red that you put in there is kind of interesting. It kind of gives it, just makes it punch more. How else can I say it? It gives it a little more pow. Maybe it's because this color dries sheer. I don't know. Again, fill in this little divot. Remember how off camera. Fill in this little divot down here. Make sure that's not square. And then you can set that aside and let that dry. So where is everybody else from? I know Christy is from a town not very far away from me, but where's everybody else located?
I'm in Illinois,
Who
Northern
said that?
Illinois. Brenda.
Northern Illinois. Okay.
I'm also
Okay.
from Illinois, about an hour west of Chicago.
Oh, is it cold up there? Like, do you get a lot of snow?
We're expecting about 10 inches in about an hour or two.
10 inches.
Yep.
Yikes. Wow.
Major flood.
Well, be careful. I hope you don't lose power or anything. Chrissy and I haven't had a lot of snow this year. It's been really unusual, which is, I mean, snowed a skiff in the valley, but we haven't been blanketed, have we?
No, not at all.
Yeah. So had we had to drive to work, many of us are working from home, it would have been a scary driving thing. Okay, so now we're going to pick up a little bit of crisp blue. I have to mix mine up really well. And we're going to make a mixture of lavender. Hold on, where's my mixture? Lavender and Snow White and a drop of crisp blue. Lavender, where are you? Okay. So what we're basically doing is we're making a bluey purple mixture. We're going to do some of the shading here on our purple things. Wow, haven't used this for a while, so I have to mix this up really a lot. Lavender and crisp blue and a little bit of titanium Snow White. Do you call it titanium white or Snow White? Anybody?
I call it Snow White.
I call it Snow White.
It's so much easier to type Snow White, but the name of it is titanium Snow White, and it takes forever to type all that out. That's just the whining part of me. I'm sorry. You're getting to know me under stress. Okay, so make like a 1-to-1 mixture of your lavender and white. And then now I can move this back to where I can actually breathe. And then we're going to mix in some blue. I think I'll put my toga up there so I've got some space. That's still not mixed up as well as I'd like. I apologize.
You know when Decorate's going to start producing again?
Well, they're trying to get caught up, but I asked that of Rosemary a couple of weeks ago, and she said, not yet. We'll let you know. End of story. So no, I don't really know. But I know that we're all anxious. But I think they might still be coming up with new lines of colors. I see their ads and I see them promoting a lot of metallic lines and things like that. So maybe that means that they're just getting caught up on those. Not sure. Okay, so kind of like that. We're just trying to make a darker blue, a darker purpley blue that we can shade with, and that looks solid blue. What's up with that? Oh my gosh, that's awful. That's ghastly. There we go. Well, my lavender's not stirring up very well. That might be part of the problem. Well, forget that. That's not going to fly. It's separated for some reason. I'll try this one more time. If I can't get the mix that I like with this, we'll do something different. But we'll know here in just a second. That's just ghastly. So forget it. Forget the mix. It's just horrid. Do not do that. Cross that out in your instructions. I don't like it, and it will not look good. It's too blue. Okay, so just try, can I get my other bottle of lavender? This is ridiculous. So hold on just a minute. Can't find my other bottle of lavender. So if you have a purple that you like, just use your lavender just straight. My lavender for some reason is too watery. Or if you have another medium value, feel free to use that. I'll try my lavender. It's pretty lumpy. I don't know what's wrong with it. If I don't like it, I'll just switch to brilliant purple, but you could use any lavender that you liked. Yeah, this is not going to work. Can you see that? It's just nothing but fluid. So that is going out the window. So I'm going to switch to brilliant purple, but you use whatever you might have, or if your lavender's fine, use just plain lavender. That looks like more like the consistency that we need. Okay, and we're just going to simply dry brush in some of this color, and then we're going to shade. This is pretty intense for that color right there, so I got to get this real soft. Soft, 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 soft. Okay, so we're just going to dry brush in some shading on the bottom of your arrowhead, which is your upside down heart. Let's get a little color going on there. If you're using lavender, it might match a little bit better than this brilliant purple because it has a slight amount of blue in it. But this will be okay. It's just kind of a shade. It's not a main element of the design, so it'll be fine. Make sure you go on the sides so they look like they all belong to the same piece. And on your arrow, I'm just not loving that too much. On your arrow, the arrow goes out like this. This is the top, it pokes out, and this is the bottom. Or you could have done it that way. It really doesn't matter because it doesn't matter how he holds the arrow. You can choose whichever you want as the top and the bottom, but just get some of the color down on the very tips, either direction. And always make sure you carry it over to the side so it's got that finished look. Okay, I'm not real thrilled with my arrow heart here. I'm going to try to soften it out a little bit. It's not my favorite look, but it'll be okay. So this is when I fill in with dry brushing when it feels like it's There's nothing more. You probably don't want your heart this dark because your lavender is going to match better than my brilliant purple did, but you're welcome to do what you'd like. I brought my color down a little bit further on my heart.
How far did you bring it down?
Well, if I'd had just lavender, let's see, I'm trying to go. I'm looking over there at my original. This is the top of the heart. If I had just my lavender, I kind of only went up about a third, but I just couldn't get this blend to look really great. So I took mine up a little bit higher. It doesn't matter that much.
Okay.
It's just a matter of taste. And we're going to float there in just a minute. And we're going to float our the little purpley hearts in the wing too. So a little bit on the tip of your bow and arrow. Okay. Now you can go ahead and wash out this brush because we don't want any purple in anything else that we're going to do. Look at these. Don't you love your sashes? Oh, you should feel proud. That's a lot of work. Who would have guessed? Okay, now we're going to do a little bit of floating with our lavender, or in my case, brilliant purple. So just get some on your brush and we're going to just float the bottom part of our arrow. Which kind of brings all the dry brushing home. Brings it on home. Set that aside for a minute. We'll do the sides in just a minute. On the arrow, or the bow, sorry, this is the bow. I'm not a hunter, you can tell that. You just need to do a little bit along the tips. I've got too much water. Just pull it down slightly. I've got way too much water. Let me try it again. Pull it down slightly. The color from the side down into the bottom. Pull it up slightly from here. Taper it off on the ends. Like that. Then when that dries, then we'll come back and maybe do it from the other side. Now, if you want to do the sides, which I recommend, of your arrow and your bow, then I would come back in, and I'm still floating, and I would just kind of float up the side, walk the float up the side until it fades away. Same thing on this side. You can just walk the float up and out until it just fades. Then you can do the same thing on the other side, on the inside. It's kind of starting at the ends. Walk it up, and then your sides match. Your sides match the top without having to do like a hard base coat line. I need a little more paint. Walking it up, and then do the same thing on your heart arrow, the tip of the arrow. Okay, this is still a little watery. Wow, I had so much water in there, and I'm going to redo that. There we go. I like that better. Yeah, if you want to darken your purple, go for it. This is not my first color purple choice, but I like it better that I've just touched it up. Like that. And then on the sides of the heart, you do want to kind of walk it up to match. So do it just like you did there. Just kind of, this is a wider one to float, so it takes a little more paint. And you'll kind of have to look at the front of your heart. You want to make sure that they kind of end in the same place. And then fill in the part that has the hole in it. so that it matches. And it's just kind of, you can either do it just with watery color or just do it just like your brush loaded for a float, which is what I think always looks the best because that's the same technique and it will match. Okay, so that's all there is to that. So you can set that aside and then go to your little arrows. So you got your arrow shaft. Is that, I said arrows, but go to your wings. Sorry. Go to your wings. We've got these little purple flowers on here. Now, on these flowers, we had the flower and then you had the little leaves, right? So where the little leaves are, that's the bottom of your flower. So get a teeny tiny skinny float and just float the bottom of those flowers next to the leaves, right above the leaves, basically. And it doesn't have to be perfect because this is really not so much in your visual cue. This is just in the background. And just get some color in the bottom of each one of those little flowers. Makes them look like they're part of the family, like they're adopted, they're part of the gang. I don't know if I'm on camera, I'm not.
Yes.
Okay, I just had to move up because like I said, I usually like to paint really close to my body. I don't know why. Now these, you might want to go over it again. You decide, let them dry for a minute and take a look. There's no really right or wrong. And you can go touch them up after, before you assemble too. So it's always good to kind of take a walk, take a break from it and come back and look at it. And I always see things the next day. I usually don't varnish the same day. I don't know how it is for you, but I usually wake up the next day and think, oh yeah, you know, and it just gives you that last chance to fix whatever you don't like. And sometimes, some of you have heard me say the painting fairy comes in the middle of the night. And if you don't know what that means, when you go to a class, maybe not so much in a Zoom class setting, because we can't necessarily see everyone's work. But when you're in a class, you've got all this mass of people, right? And everybody's painting along, pretty much keeping pace with the teacher. And sometimes I've looked at my thing and think, oh, it looks just ghastly. I've got to go home and fix it. It doesn't look as good as so-and-so's or the teacher's. It's not even close. All those things go through my head as a learner. And then I'll come home and I'll wake up the next day and look at it, and it looks totally different. And I kind of joke that the painting fairies came in overnight and they went to work on it, because it always looks better the next day when you've had some perspective and it's not being held up next to someone else's. Does anybody know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
So maybe the painting fairies will come in and fix whatever you don't care for. But just a thought. So I'm not crazy about the size of these little flowers. I will go in and fix those later, but that's not my focal point right now. But we just want a little color in the bottom of those. So we'll set those aside. Now, I know that we're at the time that we originally said we'd end. So I am so sorry for everything. If anyone has to drop off, I'm totally fine with it. And I'm not offended. And I'm just going to keep talking and recording until I'm done, even if I have not a soul out there watching me. So feel free to do that if you need to. I totally respect that. Okay. So now we're going to go to our feather. We're getting done all of our little doodad stuff first, and we're going to use forest green and eucalyptus are our next two colors. And then we'll do the hoofs, and then we'll do the piglet itself. So first start with eucalyptus mint, eucalyptus leaf.
Leaf.
Yeah. And you pretty much know what you're going to do with that, right? Oh, you know, we could stipple the inside with jadeite if you want. Not that critical though. If you want to put some highlight in, feel free to dry brush with jadeite. It's such a small part of the design. Oh, we need to put some, oh, we did. Then you can add that in if you want. I don't think you really need it. I think I did in my original with whatever the jadeite of the day was. So now these feathers have separations in them. So I'm going to paint the separations of the feathers. Can you see that? I'm going to start here and paint and base all the way down to the outside edge of that one. And this one I'll do, I need to go back up and do that one.
Is this a mix or is this straight eucalyptus?
This is just straight. Then we'll mix it for the further shade. So we're going to start here where each of the feathers are. And we're going to make sure those separations are based in. Kind of have to wait for it to dry to go back and do the other side. And I'll do along the top here. Okay. So I might have to set that aside and come back to it for a minute because I'm not going to turn on the blow dryer. We know what happened with that. Okay. So we'll come back to that in just a second. Okay, get out your hooves, the slate gray. And this is where your body, we actually get to touch the body of the pig. Yay. We'll need the pig now. Don't move your feather too far away though, because we'll have to go back to that. Okay, so on your hand, the fat part, okay, see how the hand has a littler part and then a bigger part down here. The bigger part's the bottom, so this is the top, okay? So when we're doing our highlighting, that's important. And then on the feet, let me turn my feet. I think I can move some of this stuff over. Then we'll have more room. I'm going to move my palette out of the way because I get a new one because I've got too much of that blue in there, which I don't want anywhere. Okay. Okay. Except I'll need it for that eucalyptus. Okay, so we're going to do the highlight on our feet first, and then we'll go back to finish the green. And the color is, once again, for the roll, slate gray, this light gray. So go ahead and get just a dab of that. They're not very big areas. You won't need a whole bunch. Just a bit. You know what? It just occurred to me. Have any of you had a bottle of paint that has ever been frozen or partially frozen?
No.
They will never really mix up. I got this big box of paint from Decorative one year, and they delivered it in the winter when I was at work behind a bush on my front porch, just off of my front porch behind a bush. And so I didn't see it when I got home from work that night. And I didn't discover the paints until the next morning. And many of them that had been along the top row had been partially frozen. And they looked normal, but they would never stir back together again. It's like whatever was plastic in them just wouldn't blend back in. And that's how that lavender is acting. I have the liquid on it, but I don't have, it just will not mix. So I'm sure that's the deal. And I've requested more lavender from them, but I haven't received any yet. So that's the pandemic issue for you. Okay, so slate gray. We're going to stipple and dry brush again. You can use the brush of your choice. And we've identified that the smaller side is the top side. So get your brush really dried out. Use a dry paper towel and get it really, really soft. Wipe off most of your color. You want to be able to see some white background, and let's get some highlight, probably about the upper third of that hand or that hoof is what we desire. There you go. So this is not quite the exact match that we had before either. We had to also make a mix of this one, but it will still work. So go on the sides if you would too. Get some stippling going on there and get those highlights in there. So that's kind of what we're after there. You can go a little bit down here if you want, not totally necessary, but you can. Okay, so that takes care of the hand that holds the arrow. So on the other hand, down here on the side, there's really not much to it. So just go ahead and stipple in some color in there. Now this is to the point where it feels like it's almost dry and where it's at the good point to dry brush. So I'm going to use it to scrub in a little area there and soften that. And you're going to do the same thing on the feet, which don't show on here. There we go. So on the feet, you're going to put your color mostly here, since this is the top of his feet and towards the front. Don't put any at the bottom. So you're going to do like this part of the top. So I'll be there in just a minute and show you. Did my camera just go out?
Yep.
That is what it looks like. And it says it's low battery. It's because it's plugged into the old computer. Okay, hold on just a minute. There's my peripheral equipment. Okay, now I'm going to have to turn it back on again. Apologize, it's one of the hazards of the sound thing. Gonna have to reset my camera again. Okay. Okay, now let's get the orientation back. Are we back?
Yes.
Okay. It's not upside down, right? No, the orientation's off again.
Mhm.
Hello? Oh, did I lock it? Hold on. No, I did not. Okay. 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 So we're back to the hooves and we're still dry brushing. Make sure you do the sides. And Let's pull this over a little here. Okay, oh, that's better. Okay, get some of the color down in here on the hooves. Just the upper part, a little bit over onto the toe part. And then when it feels like it's dry, go ahead and scrub some color in. I need to get a little over on the sides. Okay, so I'm debating whether or not, don't dry this out. Don't wash this out. We're going to use it again in just a minute, I think. If you want, you can go ahead and do a little bit of floating with this color and strengthen that highlight. I need to pull out a little more paint. It's not going to take a lot though. The areas are small. And then we'll go back to our leaf and then we'll move on. So if you want to brighten up that highlight slightly, you just float the color in. It kind of makes that pop, brightens it up quite a bit. Okay, and then right here on the hand, this other hand right here. Doesn't need a lot, just a tiny. Or is it in camera? No, it's not. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay, go back to our feather. Well, we still got that green on our eucalyptus leaf. And we floated down one side of it. We're just going to literally turn it upside down the other way and get some shading on the other side. We're just doing the separations, really. We're just floating around the outside edge of our piece and getting those. Can you see? I need to scoot up and get those shadings in there. Again, this is not the focal point. So if it doesn't look great right now, don't worry about it. You're going to have some lining on top of here. You're going to have some forest green going in on top of here. So you're going to be fine. I need a new paint eraser. Soften if you have harsh edges. Okay, and then we're going to take this eucalyptus mint and we're going to mix it with some forest green. No, we're not going to mix it. We're just going to go straight forest green. And we're going to deepen our shading on there. And you don't need a whole bunch. And this is such a small little area. It's going to be easy to do. My paper towel is getting too saturated. Okay, so just a tiny, do it kind of thin. And if you want, I would do the sheer float. If you feel that it'll be too dark at first, don't hesitate to do the sheer float. Now, this feather has certain areas of the feather that lay behind the other. And so the parts you want to make darker are the type parts of the feather that appear to be in the background. So this one appears to me to be in the background, and I just don't like the end of that. So I need to taper that gently. Am I on camera? Okay. Doesn't take a whole bunch, just a little bit, just to give it slightly more definition. I'm not loving the way some of these little starts and stops look. I will correct those in just a minute. So for this arrow, I would probably paint the sides of the arrow with eucalyptus leaf. I wouldn't leave them this light color. I don't know that I'd go all the way as dark as a forest green, but I think it would look better with that medium value in there. Would look a little more complete, I think. Okay, you use your judgment. There's not so much a right and wrong. And as I said, this is not really the focal point. So I think I'm going to call that okay. One more little part. Sometimes it just doesn't leave me alone. Okay, all right. So there you have it, if you can see it. So there's our colors. They look different than my original, but they'll look fun together. Okay. Oh, one thing I forgot to tell you. So on our Cupig heart where we put those little dots, you should still have your lavender out.